The sky turned red the moment the alien fleet arrived. It wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. On the planet Viridian, a small Earth colony thrived in peace. Farmers planted crops under two suns. Children played in dusty fields. No one expected the skies to split open and drop fire on their homes. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Among the first to react was a human field medic named Darren. He didn't wear armor. He carried no weapon, but his boots hit the ground running straight toward the screams. His job wasn't to kill. His job was to keep others alive. The invaders were unlike anything the colonists had seen. They were fast, brutal, and moved with no hesitation. But in the middle of the destruction, Darren noticed something strange. A young alien warrior had fallen. Not dead, not even fighting, just lying there, wounded, and abandoned by her own. Darren had a choice. Leave her or save her. He carried her into a shattered shelter, patched her wounds using supplies meant for his people, and ignored the hatred in her eyes. She didn't speak, not at first, but her breathing stabilized. Her heartbeat returned. And when she finally opened her eyes again, they were no longer filled with rage but confusion. Her name was Viola, and she couldn't understand why the human had saved her. Darren didn't give her a reason. He just moved on to the next wounded person, not caring what side they were from. Days passed, then weeks. The war didn't stop, but in the shadows of broken buildings and under collapsed towers, small moments of mercy began to spread. Darren saved more than just humans, and word of the blue-skinned girl following him began to spread. She didn't trust him, not completely, but she watched him, studied him, and eventually stood beside him. Vela had been trained to believe humans were monsters, unfeeling, violent, and dangerous. Yet this one kept risking his life for others, even when they spat at him, even when they cursed his name. That confused her more than anything. Then came the ambush. Darren and Viola had just finished evacuating a small group of injured children when they were surrounded. Enemy troops, not hers this time, but a splinter faction that hated both species. Their guns pointed at the medic first. He raised his hands, told Viola to run. She didn't. In a blur of movement, she shielded him with her body, took the first shot to her side, then another to her arm. Still she stood. Darren dragged her behind cover, used the last of his supplies to stop the bleeding. She stared at him through clenched teeth, trembling but still alive. That night, the fighting stopped. The stars above the battlefield finally stopped burning. But something else had changed too. Vela no longer walked behind him. She walked beside him, not as a soldier, not as an enemy, as something harder to define. They weren't friends, not yet. But something had started, something the galaxy wouldn't understand. And in the silence after war, the question no one dared ask was simple. Why? Did a human save an enemy, and why did she protect him back? No one had the answer, not even them. But the war had given birth to something stronger than orders, fear, or bloodlines, something that would soon be tested in ways neither of them could predict. And in time, one would be buried, and one would kneel beside the grave, begging for a second chance even if the grave was empty. After the war, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Darren didn't return to Earth. He chose to stay behind on Viridian, helping rebuild shattered villages and burying the dead. He refused medals. He didn't want interviews. His hands stayed busy with tools and gauze, not weapons or politics. Viola stayed too. No one told her to. She had no orders, no family waiting. Her species had left the planet in retreat, embarrassed by their losses and bitter at her choice to survive with humans. But she didn't chase after them. She followed Darren instead. Some of the humans glared at her. Some whispered. "That's the alien girl," they said. "The one he carried out of the fire." She heard them, but she didn't leave. Darren never asked her to explain herself. He never judged her for the war, the past, or the blood on her hands. He treated her like everyone else, and that confused her more than any battle ever had. One evening, under a broken sky full of stars and flickering satellites, Viola asked the question that had been burning in her chest. "Why did you save me?" Darren didn't answer right away. He stared at the fire, poking it with a stick, thinking. "Because you were still breathing," he said softly. "That's enough." Viola didn't speak for a long time after that, but the bond between them kept growing. Not loud, not romantic, just quiet understanding. A silent rhythm in their footsteps, a trust that didn't need words, until the day the message came. An old comm beacon flared to life, broadcasting a signal from the outskirts of Viridian. A crashed shuttle. Survivors, maybe. Darren was the first to grab his gear. Viola followed. Without a word, the wreckage was twisted and scorched. Smoke rose in lazy spirals. They found one survivor, a woman, human, injured, weak. But the moment she saw Darren, her expression changed. "You're alive," she whispered. "They said you died." He frowned. "I'm not. Obviously." The woman clutched his hand tightly. "You don't understand. There's a grave, with your name on it. Back at the colony. Everyone thinks you're dead." Darren looked at Vela. She looked back, confused. They rushed back to the colony. And it was there, in the middle of the small memorial field where the truth hit them like a punch, a fresh grave, with Darren's name. The tombstone was carved with care. "Here lies Darren, the medic who gave everything to save us." Viola stared at it in silence, her body stiff, her chest heavy. She turned and walked away, slowly, as if something inside her cracked. She didn't speak to Darren. She didn't meet his eyes. That night, she disappeared. Darren searched the village, the forest, the ruins. No trace. She was gone. He didn't understand why. Not then. But deep inside, Viola carried something she couldn't forgive. Not from him. From herself. She had lived because he saved her. And now, the galaxy believed he was dead because of that choice. Some part of her believed it should have been her in that grave. She vanished without goodbye, leaving only silence behind, and, for the first time since the war ended, Darren felt truly alone. He sat by the fake grave, staring at his own name, wondering if maybe part of him really had died back there, not in body, but in something deeper. And far away, in the shadows of another world, a blue-skinned warrior wept because she had left the only person who ever gave her a reason to live. Viola wandered through the wild lands of Viridian, far from the colony and its clean graves. She didn't sleep much. She didn't eat enough. But she walked, step after step, as if trying to outrun the memory of Darren's eyes staring at his own tombstone. She didn't understand why it had broken her so deeply. She had fought wars, watched comrades fall, seen blood pour like rivers, but something about that grave, about seeing his name etched into stone while he still breathed beside her, felt wrong in a way that no weapon ever had. She told herself she was leaving to protect him, that the rumors would stop if she disappeared. But the truth was colder. She felt unworthy. Darren had given her life, again and again. She had returned the favor only once. She wasn't equal. And the galaxy, it seemed, had already chosen who deserved to be remembered. He had a grave. She had nothing. Days passed, then weeks. She found shelter in a collapsed alien outpost, long, abandoned by her people. There she sat among broken walls and shattered memories, surrounded by the remnants of the war. Rusted armor, old blood, her old self. One night, as wind howled through the ruins, she found something unexpected. A data core, still active. She hesitated before touching it. When it blinked alive, her old language flooded the screen. Messages from commanders, combat, orders, surveillance logs, and one message labeled, Project Silence, Human Subject Darren. Her breath caught. She opened it. Inside were reports, footage, plans. Her people had watched Darren long before she ever met him. Not just during the war, but before it. They had marked him, followed him, studied him, not as a soldier, as a threat. Unnatural resilience, one report read. Survives wounds that should kill. Biological recovery outside norms. Emotional resistance beyond standard limits. Recommend immediate capture or removal. Viola stared at the words. Her skin felt cold. They hadn't just wanted to defeat humans. They feared Darren. She scrolled further, and then she saw it. The original plan. The strike on the colony wasn't random. It was meant to kill him. And she had been part of that unit. She remembered the orders now. Foggy, rushed, unclear in the chaos of battle. But she had been there. She had led the charge through the southern perimeter, the same sector where Darren had been stationed. He hadn't just saved her from death. He had saved the one sent to kill him. Viola collapsed to her knees, shaking. Everything changed in that moment. Her silence, her shame, her need to vanish. It all made sense now. She wasn't just a former enemy. She was part of a mission designed to erase the very man who had healed her. And yet, he had never judged her. He didn't even know. She had wept by his grave for forgiveness. Now she knew why, but tears were not enough anymore. She stood, tired, hungry, weak, but alive. She had to return, not just to say sorry, to warn him, because if her people had feared Darren enough to fake his death, bury his name and pull back in silence, then they weren't done with him yet. They might be planning to finish what they started, and this time she would not be the weapon. She would be the shield, even if it cost her everything. The wind cut through the trees as Viola returned to the foe colony. The place felt colder than before. Fewer voices echoed through the streets. People walked quickly with their heads low and eyes sharp. Something had changed while she was gone. Something heavy. She approached the outer fence, hands raised, stepping slow. A young guard aimed a rifle at her but didn't fire. "You're the alien who left," he muttered. "We thought you ran off for good." "I need to speak with Darren," she said. The guard hesitated, then slowly lowered his weapon. "Good luck," he said. "He's not the same anymore." Viola didn't understand what that meant, until she saw him. Darren sat alone near the old training yard, staring at the dirt. His clothes were dirty, his eyes sunken, and his beard untrimmed. He looked like someone who had been carrying a weight no one else could see. When he looked up and saw her, he didn't smile. "You left," he said. "I had to," she replied. "I needed to understand what I was before I could face you again." He didn't argue. She stepped closer, then knelt beside him and placed the small data chip in his hand. "You were marked before the war ever started," she whispered. "My people targeted you. Not because of what you did, but because of what you are." Darren stared at the chip, but said nothing. "They think you're unnatural," Viola continued. "They don't understand how a human can survive so much pain and still show kindness. They called it a threat." Finally, he laughed softly. It wasn't joyful. It was hollow. "So that's why they tried to kill me? Because I refused to become like them?" Viola nodded. "I was part of it," she added. "I didn't know it the time, but I was sent to your zone. I was supposed to help erase you." Darren didn't flinch. He just looked at her, searching her face. "And you regret it?" he asked. "I regret not knowing the truth," she said. "And I regret leaving without telling you what I found." Silence hung between them. Then Darren stood and walked past her. For a moment she thought he was leaving again. But he turned and looked over his shoulder. "Well," he said, "if they're coming back to finish what they started, we should be ready." Viola blinked. "You believe me?" He gave a tired smile. "I've seen enough to know when someone's telling the truth," he said. "Besides, you're not the only one who's been watching." He pulled out a crumpled note from his jacket and handed it to her. It was written in her people's language. Just 3 words. Phase 2 begins. They dropped it outside the colony 2 nights ago. He said. No ship. No sound. Just this. Vila's stomach turned. She had feared it. Now it was confirmed. Her people hadn't abandoned their mission, they had simply waited, studied, and now they were coming again. But this time, it wouldn't be a fire from the sky. It would be quiet, precise. They wouldn't attack the colony. They'd come for Darren alone, and if he vanished again, this time for real, there wouldn't be another grave to kneel beside. Vela clenched the note in her hand. We're not going to run, she said. No, Darren replied. We're going to let them come. And as the two stood together once more, shoulder to shoulder beneath the growing storm clouds, something passed between them. Not love, not yet, but something deeper, a promise. This time, they would fight as one. The message came at night, a silent pulse through the air, too faint for most to notice. But Viola felt it in her bones. Her species had been trained to sense such signals. Cloaked ships, hidden movements, the silent approach of something deadly. They're here, she whispered. Darren was already moving. He grabbed a small bag and tossed Vela a scanner. They won't hit us head on, he said. This time they want it clean. Quiet. Vela nodded. Assassins. They split up, pretending to act normal. The colony was asleep. Only a few solar lights blinked along the roads. No one knew the danger crawling beneath their feet. Vila headed to the outer fields while Darren stayed near the infirmary. They didn't have a military force anymore, just survivors, farmers, builders. But that didn't mean they were defenseless. Vila found the first sign in the crops. A faint shimmer, a footprint with no owner. She turned quickly, slicing her knife through the air, and struck something solid. Sparks flew, revealing a half-cloaked figure falling into the dirt. She didn't pause. She finished the job, then activated her signal beacon. More would come. Near the center of the colony, Darren faced his own ghost. She stepped from the shadows without sound, taller than Vila, black armor, eyes like mirrors. I was told you were dead, the assassin said. Darren didn't blink. A lot of people were told that. You've caused trouble, she continued. Confusion, doubt. Your actions have unbalanced more than one war front. Darren tilted his head. Because I save people? Because you inspire them, she said coldly. You were never meant to lead, just to fall. She lunged. Darren dodged the blade barely. He wasn't a soldier, but he'd learned to survive. He moved fast, used his surroundings, knocked over a light post to block her path, threw dirt in her eyes, fought not to win, but to delay. Vila arrived seconds later, panting, bleeding from a shallow cut. She saw the fight and didn't hesitate. She attacked from behind, forcing the assassin to retreat a few steps. The three clashed in the street, silent, brutal. Darren took a knife to the ribs but stayed standing. Vila blocked a death blow aimed at his neck. The assassin moved like smoke, almost too fast to follow. But together they held their ground. Then the sound of more footsteps. Colonists, awake, watching. The assassin paused. You've made them believe you matter, she said to Darren. That you're special. He stood tall, blood dripping from his side. I'm not special, he said. I'm human. And that's enough. The assassin looked around, at the people now standing behind Darren. Farmers, mechanics, children, all holding makeshift weapons. Not trained, not warriors, but ready. Then we'll adjust, the assassin said, vanishing in a blink. She didn't die. She didn't fail. She simply retreated. For now. Vela grabbed Darren before he fell. She wrapped his arm around her shoulder and helped him, back to the infirmary. He was pale but alive. I told you they wouldn't stop, she said. He gave a weak grin. Neither will we. As she stitched his wound, Darren asked something that caught her off guard. Why do they care so much about me? I'm not a soldier. Not a hero. Viola hesitated, then finally said the words. Because they ran every test, scanned every human. You weren't the strongest or the fastest, but you healed faster than anyone. You stayed calm under pressure, you never broke. And worse, for them, you made others believe they could do the same. She looked into his tired eyes. They're afraid of you, because you remind people what it means to be human. Darren didn't reply. He closed his eyes, letting her words sink in. Outside, the colony buzzed with quiet courage. For the first time, they knew the enemy didn't fear their weapons, they feared their hope, and Darren had become the symbol of it. The next morning, the colony felt different. Not broken, not defeated, awake. People who had once avoided Viola now nodded at her. Some offered water, others whispered thanks. They had seen her fight, shield Darren, and bleed beside him. For the first time, they saw her not as a former enemy, but as one of their own. But Viola couldn't enjoy the warmth. Her mind raced. The assassin hadn't come to kill Darren. She came to measure him, and to send a message back. Darren was still, recovering. His ribs were bruised, stitched, and wrapped tight. But he didn't stay in bed. He walked slowly through the colony, talking to people, checking on supplies, helping build stronger walls. Pain or not, he refused to sit still. Viola pulled him aside when the suns dipped low. They're not done, she said. They'll escalate. And if they can't destroy you quietly, they'll try something louder. Darren nodded. I know. He looked toward the distant hills. They're going to hit something soft, aren't they? He asked. Not me. The people around me. Viola's silence said enough. That night, she hacked into one of the abandoned relay towers on the edge of the colony. It still hummed with buried connections to her people's network. She tuned into encrypted channels, risking exposure. What she found confirmed her fears. A strike was coming, not with ships or guns, but with words, a broadcast, a lie. At midnight, every screen in the colony flickered to life. A hooded figure, alien, faceless, spoke in perfect Earth standard. This message is for the humans of Viridian Colony, it began. We grieve with you. We regret the loss of the brave medic Darren. Gasps rippled across the colony. The voice continued. Some of you claim he still lives, but that is false. The man you protect is not who you believe. He is a danger to you all, a failed experiment, a broken tool of war. Surrender him and you will be spared what follows. The screen cut to black. People looked at each other in silence. Some were confused. Others were afraid. A few looked toward the infirmary with doubt. Vela rushed there immediately. Darren was already sitting up, watching the dark screen with a blank stare. They're trying to fracture the colony, she said. Make you seem like a threat, a weapon. Darren didn't speak for a moment, then he stood, ignoring the pain. Then let's show them who I really am. He walked into the open courtyard, where dozens had already gathered. Their eyes searched him for answers. Darren raised his voice. I'm not perfect, he said. I've bled in your streets, failed to save lives I swore to protect. I don't know why they fear me, but I know one thing, they're lying. A murmur spread through the crowd. I was there, he continued, when the fires rained down, when families screamed. I didn't pick up a gun. I picked up the broken, I carried the wounded, I buried the dead. If that's what they call a weapon, then maybe we need more of them. Someone clapped. Then more. Soon, the whole colony stood with him. But Viola wasn't smiling. She watched the distant tree line with narrow eyes. They wouldn't stop now. The speech had worked, but it had also painted a target. The next time they came, they wouldn't come to lie. They'd come to erase. And Vela knew what the enemy had done before. She knew what they were willing to do again. They had built him a grave once. This time, they'd try to make it real. And she would be ready to stop them, even if she had to die in his place. The sun didn't rise the next morning, at least not in the way it should have. Instead, a pale red glow settled over the sky, unnatural and thick. The air felt heavy. Birds didn't chirp. Machines that ran all night now sat silent. Something had arrived. Something cloaked, watching. Darren stood outside the infirmary, arms crossed, pain still tightening his side. He saw the color in the sky and knew what it meant. Not weather, not solar flare. It was them. "They're here," Viola said quietly. Stepping beside him, he nodded once. "And they're not hiding this time." By noon, the attack began, not from the sky but from within. Explosions tore through the storage depot and comms tower. Fires lit up the edges of the colony. Screams echoed. Saboteurs, already inside the fences, had waited for this signal. Darren rushed into the chaos without hesitation. He pulled a trapped child from rubble. He dragged a farmer away from a collapsing wall. He ignored the pain in his ribs, the blood on his hands. Vela fought like a storm. Her movements were sharp and precise. Every target she struck dropped before they could blink. Her people had trained her to kill silently. Now she used every part of that training to protect. She saw the moment the true threat arrived. A new figure, taller than the rest. Jet black. Armor. 2 swords drawn, moving straight for Darren through the chaos. She ran, screamed his name, but the assassin reached him first. The blade went in just below Darren's chest. He gasped, staggered, and dropped to one knee. Vela reached them and slammed into the assassin with a roar, blade clashing against blade. The force knocked both of them back. The assassin rolled and rose again, ready to strike once more. But Darren, even wounded, stood again. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He faced his attacker with blood on his lips and defiance in his eyes. "Is this what scares you?" he asked. "That I don't stay down?" The assassin didn't answer. He lunged again. But this time, Viola was faster. She drove her blade deep, straight through the assassin's side. He twitched once, then dropped. The threat was gone. But so was Darren's strength. He fell to the ground unconscious, breath shallow. Vela dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hand over the wound, her fingers slick with his blood. "No. No," she whispered. "Stay with me, please." The colony fought on behind her, but she didn't hear it. She only saw his pale face, the blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, the way his chest rose slower with every breath. "You saved me," she said, her voice trembling. "Again. Always. Even when I didn't deserve it." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I should have protected you first. I should have been the one on the ground." She reached into her pack and pulled out a sealed vial. Medical nanites from her people. Forbidden to use on outsiders. Illegal. Dangerous. But she didn't care. She crushed it in her palm and pressed the liquid into his wound. "Please work," she whispered. Darren's body shuddered, then went still. His eyes didn't open. His lips didn't move. Vela sobbed. She pressed her forehead to his and closed her eyes, shaking. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." That's how they found her. Kneeling at the side of a man they thought dead. The man who had become more than a medic, more than a symbol, and to her, more than a friend. Someone she couldn't imagine losing. But as the wind passed through the broken trees and smoke cleared from the skies, no one noticed something shift in the soil nearby. No one saw the faint twitch of Darren's fingers. Not yet. Because sometimes, hope comes quietly. The fires were gone. The air had cleared. And for the first time in days, the colony stood still. They buried the dead in silence. Names were carved into stone. Hands trembled over flowers laid at the base of fresh graves. But one grave, marked with care, drew the most attention. Darren's. It had been placed near the old comm tower, a place he used to sit when treating the wounded. The nameplate gleamed in the sun, fresh and final. Darren. He healed what others tried to break. The people believed he was gone because Vela told them he was. She stood there alone, hours after the service had ended. Her hands shook. Her armor was stained with dried blood. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed with dark circles from days without rest. She knelt beside the grave. "I failed you," she whispered. "They tried to erase you, and I let them get too close." Her voice cracked. "You were the only one who looked at me like I was more than what I was trained to be. You didn't ask for anything in return. Not once. And I left you alone when you needed me most." Her hand brushed the soil. "I would trade places if I could." Tears slid down her cheeks and fell to the dirt. The sky above was bright, birds circling in peaceful silence. She bowed her head and wept, so quietly, so completely, that she didn't hear the footsteps behind her. The hand touched her shoulder gently. She froze. Her head jerked up. She turned. And there he was, Darren, alive, standing in the sun, bandaged but breathing, scarred but whole. Her mouth fell open but no words came. He knelt beside her. "Don't cry over someone who's still standing," he said softly. Vela stared, speechless, her hands reaching to touch his face to be sure he was real. When her fingers brushed his cheek and he didn't vanish, her knees gave way and she leaned into him, arms wrapping around his chest, shaking. "You were dead," she whispered. "I was close," he said, "but you pulled me back." The nanites had worked, just barely, just enough. They'd taken hours to repair what should have killed him. While the colony prepared a grave, he had lain hidden in recovery, protected by those who still believed. "Let them bury you," Vela said. "I let them think you were gone." "Let them," Darren said. "Let them believe the man they feared is buried. Let them think they won. It'll keep them off us for now." She pulled back, eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before. Not sorrow, but something closer to love, and something deeper than that. Purpose. "What now?" she asked. Darren stood slowly and looked out over the colony. "Now we live," he said. "We rebuild. We teach them not to fear, not to kneel, not to follow orders that lead to silence." Viola rose beside him. "But what if they come again?" Darren looked to the horizon, where the stars shimmered above the tree line. "Then we show them," he said, "that the dead don't stay buried when they still have something worth fighting for." And as they walked away from the grave, his grave, hand in hand, the story that had once been written in stone was rewritten in breath. He had been buried, and yet he walked. And the one who wept at his grave no longer cried for forgiveness. She walked beside the man who never asked for it, and together they stepped into the future, alive, free, unbreakable.